And now I'm back. One other thing I wanted to say to you guys. I'm sorry it's been so long. I just need to look for a more appropriate setting as well. Something that would look a lot better to you guys rather than just the previous settings I had used for each and every one of my videos. I'm sure y'all were pretty fond of the first setting though. And I'm going to quickly continue on the other Zevie moments in How to Rock for right now. Let's see what we got. We have... I was on How to Rock a Birthday Party, and I don't know if I said this one already before. They were talking before rehearsal. They stood next to each other smiling at a point in the song when they were saying the last one standing in the end. When Nelson is talking about the next level to Casey, you will see Xander having his arm around Stevie and Stevie leaning into Xander. Did not say that part. How to Rock a Part-Time Job. Stevie sat in Xander's seat after he got up to sit in his lap. I've only seen it like twice. She looked a bit jealous when he and Casey were singing together. She lets him hide behind the counter. Whatever you do in your private time. No, seriously. She asks if he wants a smoothie, and he said she read his mind. Stevie gives her smoothies to Xander all the time. She whacks him out when he gets a cramp. He knows she's still upset and sounds worried. How to Rock Halloween. And I've only seen this episode once. This is the only one I've seen once. I've seen the others at least twice. Probably 3 times each. Well, at least twice, because I've only seen How to Rock CeeLo twice. When he complains about being the thumb, she says it's cool. They become the surfer fingers, which cheers him up about being the thumb. What are the surfer fingers exactly? Is it that? Nah, I don't know. When she howls, she leans into him a little. When they were talking to Casey about going trick-or-treating, they stand very close to each other, occasionally glancing at each other and smiling. While talking to Casey about... Do they seriously, like, choreograph this all? Wow. This... Impressive. It is. Xander and Stevie are sitting next to each other. Oh, wait. While talking to Casey about trick-or-treating, Xander had his arm around her. Xander and Stevie are sitting next to each other with their instruments when Casey comes in. Just a moment. I got a snack I can barely keep out of my hands. When the thunder crashes, she jumps into his arms and he catches her. He keeps holding her for a bit, and when he puts her down, they keep their arms around each other. When Xander says that there are hot chicks at the party, Stevie glares at him angrily. Stevie pats him on the arm when he says that he'll find Casey. She scoffs and makes a face when Molly flirts with Xander. Stevie seems upset and annoyed when Molly and Xander are flirting with each other. After Stevie says, "I am so hip," Xander glances at her and smiles. Before Xander starts reading from the Book of Truth, Stevie squeezes his arm tightly. I have to view this episode again at some point. I wasn't that fond of it the first time I saw it, but just for these little things, I gotta view it again. Maybe just not even view the whole thing. I don't know. How to Rock a basketball team. While rehearsing, Xander gave Stevie a funny look and she laughed. They constantly look and smile at each other while performing. Xander shows concern when Stevie confronts Casey. Xander looked concerned for her after she told him that Casey was drawing in the crowd. While performing, they signal to each other before coming up from behind Casey to do a move with her. How to Rock a love song. This one's chock full of them. Chock full. At the beginning, Xander and Stevie are shown sitting very close to each other and facing each other at the top of the couch, while Casey is a little ways back. Stevie thinks Xander likes either her or Casey first, but quickly changes her mind. Stevie thinks that Xander likes her, Stevie imagines that Xander likes Stevie and rides away with her on a motorcycle. That's not weird at all. It's every girl's fantasy, I guess. The guy with a motorcycle. In the Zevie fantasy, it is less cheesy and a bit more realistic versus Casey's fantasy, which consists of loving smiles and Xander showering Casey with flowers and chocolates during a band rehearsal. Yes, it's just all about the material possessions and at the same time the attention she's getting. It's different with Stevie. It is. It definitely is. I definitely acknowledge that. In Stevie's fantasy, Xander calls her Steviekins. Also in the fantasy, Xander is being overprotective over her, showing that he deeply cares for her. Stevie thought Xander's song was really sweet until she thought it was about her. When Casey was about to read Xander's notebook, Stevie told her not to, maybe because she respects Xander's privacy or she didn't want to find out who Xander's lady is. Stevie kept poking Xander playfully when she was teasing about who he was writing about for his love song. Xander sings to Stevie's side of the couch first before singing to Casey when he reveals to the girls who his lady is. When he shushes Stevie and Casey and said, "Let my heart speak," he was staring right at Stevie. Stevie smiled when Xander was on her side singing to her. He smiled just a little bit more. Somebody might have made a typo. When Xander sang "We're Unconditional," Stevie smiled and Casey didn't. Stevie was way more upset about the dog than Casey was. Not to mention the fact that Casey... You have Casey in the room with him at the end? That didn't fit. That didn't make sense. It should have been Stevie in the room with him, and it should have been Casey chasing Nelson and Kevin out, if you ask me. Yes, I ship Zevie too. I'm not just all about Zolly. Although I would be very interested in seeing Zolly happen, at the same time, hey, if Zevie's the most supported ship, who's to say they don't like it? Really? Who's to say they don't support it? At least to a certain degree. And even if if the show did continue on past its first season, if Zolly didn't happen and Zevie did, I would have still been satisfied. As long as they still gave Molly her day in court, so that she could be shown as just more than just a one-dimensional character, rather than just a mean girl, but more so. Because Roger wasn't just a mean guy, bully, always tormenting Doug on Doug. I mean, he truly was a character with feelings at the same time. So they should have definitely delved into her at some point as well, if they had continued the show on past this season. Stevie seemed like she could relate more to the song than Casey. Xander went to Stevie's side of the couch before going to Casey's side. Kevin wanted the song to be about Stevie because he likes Casey, duh. Yes. That pair almost seemed kind of bizarre to me. So, it's interesting how when Nelson wanted it to be about Stevie too, so there you go. It doesn't say that. When Stevie smiled while Xander was on her side, he smiled back. But when Casey smiled while Xander was on her side, he just continued singing "No Smile." Stevie seemed... Well, the cameras cut to Kevin saying, "It's Stevie, yes." You would see Xander look at Stevie one last time before he would go to Casey's side. Also, when Kevin says that it's Stevie, Nelson nods the grin. Also, one other thing with a little tangent for How to Rock a Love Song. Was there really any point at all to having Molly and Grace in that episode if you were just going to put them in the subplot? Those subplots, they're always the least interesting aspects of the show. They truly are. Except for those rare occasions where you actually watch the episode more for the subplot than for the actual plot of the episode. The actual storyline. Anyways. Also, when Kevin says that it's Stevie. Nelson nods in agreement. Yes, like I said, he wants it to be about her too, or he thinks it's about her too. When Stevie asks for $5, Xander and Stevie have no personal space, unlike Casey and Xander. Xander was still willing to get hay for Stevie's horse, even though he had no idea what was going on. When Casey and Stevie get their gross on, Stevie is still closer to Xander than Casey. When Xander says, "I'm in love," and instead my lady heard it directly from me, he was looking at Stevie. During the whole confrontation, Xander was looking at Stevie, not at Casey. During the Slurpee dog chow fight scene, it seemed kind of pointless to me in the end. Casey seemed as if it was just for fun, but Stevie looked like she was actually getting back at Xander because she really thought the song was for her. How to wreck CeeLo. When Stevie first enters the lunch area during Kevin and Nelson's handshake, she stands next to Xander. After a while, Stevie sits down next to Xander and they touch each other's hands in a spaz moment. After Xander clapped for the more like he clapped for Molly, Stevie looked at him with an annoyed expression and swats at his arm. Because really, was it really the pervs? It was more the Molly show than it was anything else. And for those who say Garfunkel's a stupid name, it's Simon and Garfunkel. Casey Simon, Molly Garfunkel. Yes, her original name was Molly Knight, and yes, it probably would have fit better. But at the same time, come on, the annotation, it's clever to a certain degree, and I actually, surprisingly enough, didn't notice it until I actually read it on the computer. Yeah, after Xander clapped for Molly, Stevie looked at him with an annoyed expression and swatted his arm. They stood next to each other almost throughout the entire episode. Stevie patted Xander's arm. They both shared smiles. While in the band room, Stevie's head was almost lying on top of Xander's lap. I should look for that next time. When they are in CeeLo's dressing room and Stevie switches to the couch, she sort of trips into Xander and looks are shared. Should probably look for that one too. These are so, like, blatantly unnoticeable that, like, only somebody who pays very extremely close attention, who's very, very into it in that sense. Can't find the right words for it now. They'll notice it. During most moments, Stevie and Xander are either squished next to each other, touching, or very close to touching each other at the sides. Continuously throughout performing, when Casey steps to Nelson's side, Stevie walks over to Xander and plays with him. At one point, they even both jump and stick their hands in the air in unison. When the lunch lady is trying out, Stevie and Xander try to stop her together and only them. In CeeLo's dressing room, as CeeLo is starting to speak, sitting in his chair, Stevie grabs Xander's arm and he looks at her. A second later, she grabs him again and they both smile before Xander bends next to CeeLo. When Andy is trying out, Stevie spelled wrong in this case. Stevie whips her hair at Xander, turning and then mouths "no" to Xander before smiling back at Andy. At the very end, when the credits were starting to go up, Stevie and Xander leave together, eating Stevie's popcorn, leaving Casey and the boys behind. When Xander spoke the very first line right after CeeLo reveals he only wants Casey, Stevie was the only one who agreed, while Kevin and Nelson never showed acknowledgement. Showed acknowledgement is spelled as one word for the record. When they were running out of the kitchen, Stevie held the door for everybody else, and Xander put his arm on her back and pushed her out with him. After CeeLo said he wanted them on tour, Stevie jumps onto Nelson. He holds her up. You see Xander do a double take at them and immediately stops smiling. Before Casey comes in the band room, Stevie says something about if Casey would leave them without a singer, and Xander looks at her and says that he would too, because it's a big opportunity possibly to comfort her. Before Grace and the rest of Gravity 5 performed, Grace walks over to the group and Xander is looking at Stevie, and Stevie tilts her head to look at him and he looks away all fast. He got caught looking at her. Interesting. I'm gonna have to divide it into 3 parts actually, you guys. Hold up.